We all have a dream job, a vocation we feel uniquely destined for. Being both a writer and lover of video games, I always wanted to be a teacher who specialized in video game narratives. If you've been following my channel for some time, welcome back and thank you. You know that I believe that video games ought to be treated with the same academic respect as literature and film. Thanks to the advent of YouTube and the inception of the long-form video essay, it's understood that there are valuable and significant aspects of new media that are worth investigating. Unfortunately, it's still too early for higher education to embrace and accept this. But if I were given a chance to teach my own college-level course about video game writing, the game I'd choose as the class's required text is LucasArts' 1998 masterpiece, Grim Fandango. Grim Fandango set a standard of excellence for creative vision in video games. It is charming, profound, hilarious, and at times, all three at once. It has a punk rock level of sincerity and fearlessness, an attitude that has been lacking in big budget video games lately. Beyond that, the reason why I think Grim holds up today is its phenomenal writing. In this editorial, I will break down and analyze the components of Grim Fandango in a creative writing context, namely in its artistic and ludic design, its themes, and its superb dialogue. Needless to say, I'll be spoiling this 25-year-old game, so if you haven't experienced it already, I highly recommend playing it first before continuing. It's never been easier to play Grim Fandango, as its remastered version is available on Steam, GOG, the PlayStation Store, the Microsoft Store, and the Nintendo eShop. If you can't be bothered to or haven't played it in a while, here's a recap. Grim Fandango is the story of Manuel Calavera, a Grim Reaper travel agent in the land of the dead. Souls are expected to endure a 4-year journey across the land of the dead in order to reach the 9th underworld where eternal rest lies. However, the journey itself is fraught with danger. Manny works for the Department of Death, offering premium travel packages to the newly departed in exchange for the money that they were buried with. There's a catch though. The souls must have led good lives in order to qualify for these luxury methods of travel. Once the DoD's best travel agent, Manny can't seem to find good clients anymore. What's worse is that he, himself, is trying to atone for an unknown sin he committed in life before he can begin his own pilgrimage. After being assigned to another bad soul, Manny decides to take matters into his own hands by stealing a client that was meant for his nemesis, Domino Hurley. Here, Manny meets Mercedes Colomar, who lived a very pious life and was practically guaranteed a ticket on the prestigious number 9, an express train that truncates the 4-year journey into 4 minutes. Strangely, Manny couldn't find any travel packages Meche qualified for. While being chewed out by his boss, it's revealed that Meche in fact did qualify for a ticket on the number 9, but she already left to journey on foot before anyone could stop her. While trying to reunite with Meche, Manny unknowingly began his journey of the soul and uncovered a plot that corrupted the DoD. Someone is robbing souls of their fates, but to what end? Before we can analyze Grim Fandango, we must first define the most prominent literary device it uses in its writing: irony. For something that is taught in every public school English curriculum, irony is often conflated with comedic coincidence. Something funny is happening, so it must be ironic. Though it is true that irony often thrives in humor, it doesn't account for its tragic or cruel counterparts. I think Bender said it best during Futurama's first series finale.
The use of words expressing something other than their literal intention. Now that is irony.
What Bender is defining here is what we know as verbal irony, the difference between what is said and what is meant. We're also probably familiar with the idea that there exists other forms of irony, at least 2 more. Situational irony, the difference between what is expected and what actually happens, and dramatic irony, the difference between what a character knows and what the audience knows to be true. Though verbal and dramatic irony are easier to identify, situational irony is often the hardest to interpret properly. Take, for example, Alanis Morissette's 1996 hit, Ironic. This song has been discussed at length because none of the situations the speaker presents is actually ironic. Bender, again, would say,
It's not ironic, it's just coincidental.
Ironically, because the song doesn't present any ironic situations, it is in itself very ironic. So, how are we better to understand irony in order to accurately identify it? Looking back at the definitions of the 3 common types of irony I presented, the word difference appears in each one. Irony is best understood as the contrast between 2 layers, a surface layer and a lower layer. The surface layer is where a situation or figure of speech is presented literally, at face value, if you will. The lower layer is where context for the situation or speech lies. We can use Manny's dilemma as an example. In the beginning of the game, Manny is a Grim Grim Reaper travel agent. He sells premium travel packages to the recently deceased in order to transition safely and comfortably into the land of eternal rest. However, Manny himself cannot partake in his own journey of the soul, as he is atoning for an unknown sin he committed in life. Using our structure of irony, we can say that on the surface layer, that Manny is responsible for arranging the safe passage for others, yet on the lower layer, Manny is trapped in a state of purgatory while working off his time. It is, therefore, ironic that the psychopomp is stuck in an occupation where he can't move on. Surface level, context, and contrast. These three factors must be present for irony to exist.
Where is everybody?
Oh, Manny, did you forget what day it is today?
Oh man, did I come in on Saturday again?
It's the Day of the Dead. Everybody's back in the land of the living, visiting their families like we should be.
It is impossible to discuss Grim Fandango without talking about its artistic direction. The game's most distinguishable feature is its combination of two unique aesthetics: Mexican folk art and film noir. While developing his previous game, lead writer and director Tim Schafer had the seedling that would later grow into Grim Fandango. As Schafer wrote in the post-mortem designer diary featured in the game's official strategy guide, the truth is, I had part of the Fandango idea before I did Full Throttle. I wanted to do a game that would feature those little papier-mâché folk art skeletons from Mexico. Schafer cites John Greenlay's The Days of the Dead as an inspirational entry point. The book itself was the first published photo book that documented El Dia de los Muertos, the Mexican festival honoring the dead. Every year between November 1st and 2nd, the boundaries that separate the realms of the living and dead disappear. The spirits of loved ones return to their living families to visit. The pieces curated on Greenlay's online gallery provide a glimpse into this festive season. Graves are painted pastel pink and blue. Bread is baked for both the living and the dead to enjoy, and candles light the way for familiar ancestors. The way death is presented during the season contradicts our traditionally Eurocentric attitudes towards it. We typically have a negative relationship with the concept of death. We associate it with loss, grief, and fear, not of candy skulls and jubilation. In his collection of essays, The Labyrinth of Solitude, Life and Thought in Mexico, Mexican Nobel laureate Octavio Paz shared the general attitude his culture had towards death. Death defines life. A death depicts a life in immutable forms. We do not change except to disappear. Our deaths illuminate our lives. If our deaths lacked meaning, our lives also lacked it. Contrary to popular perception, El Dia de los Muertos is not a celebration of death, but rather a celebration of the dead returning. In Day of the Dead, when two worlds meet in Oaxaca, Author Sean D. Haley argues that if we accept that the dead are on the same level as the living and not elevated to some higher status, the Day of the Dead celebration can be seen for what it really is: a welcoming of long-lost relatives into their previous homes for a short period of time. If we consider that the dead are no different from the living other than being dead, the parallel between the visit of a long-lost living relative and the visit on the Day of the Dead of a long-lost relative who just happens to be dead is astounding. Moreover, the Day of the Dead has its roots in Aztec mythology, which is also represented in Grim Fandango. The Aztecs believed that a soul's fate was not determined by the life it lived, but the nature of its death. Children and infants will arrive at Chichihuacoaco. Warriors who fell in battle and women who died during childbirth went to Iwilquatziltonatil. Those who drowned or were struck by lightning would go to Talocan. And finally, and relevant to our discussion, everyone who perished either from sickness or natural causes would undergo a 4-year journey into Mictlan. Mictlan was ruled by Mictlantecuhtli and Mictecacihuatl, the Lord and Lady of the Dead respectively. The soul will have to endure 9 trials, which include 1. Having to cross a river that can only be forded with the aid of a spirit dog. 2. Having to travel between 2 mountains that clash against each other. 3. Having to traverse a mountain that was riddled with sharp obsidian. 4. Having to travel through a frozen waste. 5. Being buffeted by winds until you're ejected into the next underworld. 6. Having to suffer through a field where arrows representing everyone who had an impact on your life are shot at you. 7. Having your heart eaten by jaguars. 9. Sweet oblivion after meeting Mictlantecuhtli and Mictecacihuatl. Grim Fandango presents its cultural inspirations with due reverence. For Grim, El Dia de los Muertos and its indigenous roots are not merely visual aesthetics, but integral facets of its identity. For sure, the Department of Death Building and the cat racetrack in Rubalcaba were designed with Mesoamerican deco sensibilities. But Grim's stories, settings, and characters all hinge on a deep understanding of the culture's folklore, beliefs, and art. Representing Mexican culture while avoiding appropriation was a goal for Schafer's during Grim's development.
Now it would seem a lot like cultural appropriation, right? I'm going to come in here as this guy who's not from the culture, and I'm going to do a game about that culture. I think I would handle a lot different. But the thing I am proud of is that I feel like just try to be very true to the folklore, and we really did our research, and we're very as authentic as we could be, and it made a connection with. We got press from like Latin communities and people from like Mexican and Cuban, both communities who like wanted to talk about the game, and they were just really happy to have that culture represented, at all.
The other half of Grim's artistic identity is its influence from classic film noir, particularly Chinatown and Casablanca. Casablanca's DNA can be most seen in the game's second act, where Manny becomes a nightclub manager. The game's film noir influence is most heard through its dialogue, which was heavily influenced by American, British novelist and screenwriter Raymond Chandler. On the surface, Mexican folklore and film noir don't have much in common, but Tim Schafer managed to find the through line between these two worlds. I had just seen Chinatown, and I really liked the whole water supply real estate scam that Noah Cross had going there. So of course, I tried to rip that off and have Manny be a real estate salesman who got caught up in a real estate scandal. Then he was just like the guys in Glengarry Glen Ross, always looking for the good leads. But why would Hector LeMans, my villain, want real estate? Why would anyone? They're dead. They're only souls. What do souls in the land of the dead want? They want to get out. They want safe passage out, just like in Casablanca. The land of the dead is a transitory place, and everyone's waiting around for their travel papers. So Manny's a travel agent selling tickets on the big train out of town, and Hector's stealing the tickets. During the adventure game boom of the 1990s, typically one of two systems were used for users to interact with the events on screen. The point-and-click interface, which was made popular by Sierra Online, and the verb system, which was used in most LucasArts adventure games. For Grim, however, Tim Schafer wanted to create a minimalistic interface where interaction was literal and less metaphorical.
We wanted everything about the interface. We wanted to have like no interface, so everything was literal. Nothing was like a metaphor. Because in a normal interface, the cursor is a metaphor for like your attention point, what you're looking at, and the highlight of a cursor is kind of like a metaphor for this is interesting. And your inventory, your verbs when they come up are a metaphor for what you're thinking about doing to that object. And we want everything to be just literal. So like when you're walking around, instead of highlighting things in the room, he actually looks at the thing when that came up.
Furthermore, Schafer favored the contentious tank control style of movement used in games like Bioforge and Resident Evil, rather than the camera relative style we are more accustomed to. Aside from being a stylistic necessity when using pre-rendered backgrounds, Schafer argued that it provides a more immersive gameplay experience by further leaning into the literal design ethos.
Tank controls I thought were superior to point and click at the time, because when you're pointing and clicking, you're distant from the screen, and the screen is this other thing that you're interacting with at your fingertips.
Right.
But when you're doing tank controls, you feel like you are in the center of the character,
right,
and the world is rotating around you. And so when you think, instead of going, I want to go on the left of the screen or I want to go to the right of the screen, you're saying, I want to look at the thing to the left of me and the thing to the right of me.
The game's 2015 remaster added options to play with a point-and-click interface and camera relative movement, but still retained its original control scheme. There's even an achievement for completing the game using tank controls. A noteworthy aspect of the game's puzzle design is how Manny uses his scythe in unconventional means. We typically see the scythe as either an icon or symbol of the Grim Reaper. It is his bladed trademark, the one he uses to reap souls. Other video games that feature the Grim Reaper has the character use a scythe as a weapon. However, Manny sees his scythe more as a tool of his trade. Throughout the game, he uses it to free Gloss's heart from spiderwebs, bar a door, retrieve a metal detector among cat litter, hook a ship's anchor into a porthole, break into a safe, and remove tape from a doorbell. The only time it can be used as a weapon is during the fight with Darmal Hurley at the end of Act 3, but ironically is at its most ineffective. The other weapon Manny acquires is a Sproutella gun, and is also ineffective when used directly with the game's primary antagonist. It is only effective when used indirectly by shooting the water tank connected to the greenhouse Hector LeMans is holed up in.
That's the way back to the forest, the spiders, the city, my old job. Let's hope I never have to take that road again.
Throughout Grim Fandango, travel serves as a central theme, representing both physical movement and personal growth. Manny's personal quest to find and save Meche becomes much more than a physical endeavor. It becomes a transformative experience for Manny. When Manny leaves El Morro to begin his search, he also begins his 4-year journey of the soul. Besides traveling on foot, a good soul may be entitled to traveling by car, ship, or train into the 9th Underworld. The irony, however, is that Manny gets to travel by the 3 luxury methods. just not in the way he expected. In the first act, Manny meets the demon mechanic Glottis, who becomes his stalwart companion for the entirety of the game. Glottis modifies a work vehicle into a hot rod called the Bone Wagon. This became the sports car given to Manny. After the game's second year, Manny becomes the captain of the SS Limbo while pursuing Domino and Meche. Moreover, Manny retrieves Velasco's estranged ship, the SS La Mancha, at the end of Act 3. These became the luxury ocean cruise for Manny. Finally, at the beginning of Act 4, Manny must construct a high-speed vehicle not only to retrieve the stolen double-end tickets from Hector in Almaro, but also to revive a speed-deprived Glottis. This takes the form of a rocket-powered gondola, acting as a stand-in for the Underworld Express train. The irony here goes deeper, as in order for Manny to progress to the end of his journey, he must travel back to where his journey began. The game also explores the concept of the journey being more important than the destination. Although Manny's ultimate goal is to reach the 9th Underworld, his interactions and experiences along the way are what truly define his journey. Through the encounters with the game's memorable cast, Manny learns valuable lessons about friendship, loyalty, and the power of taking risks. So yes, the real Grim Fandango were the friends we made along the way.
Manny, the Limbo's not a passenger ship. She's small cargo, son. And every hand on board works.
Our work?
What are your skills?
Sales and restaurant management.
Characters from adventure games are intrinsically tied to their occupations. Broken Sword's George Stobart and Siberia's Kate Walker are both lawyers. Sam and Max are freelance police, and Rosangela Blackwell, Gabriel Knight, and Adrian Delaney are all writers. It is almost paradoxical that these games manage to find adventure within the most mundane aspect of adulthood. But I believe that's why we find these narratives so compelling as adults. We long for an escape from our offices, our tills, and our workstations. We want a Deus Ex Machina to sweep us off our feet. We want adventure. Grim Fandango has an oxymoronic relationship with how it presents work. Yes, all the characters have jobs, but they're all dead. Why would dead people be expected to punch the clock as they did in life? This also comes from the game's Aztec mythology influence. Professor of Mexican Literature at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, Ignacio de la Garza Galvez, explains, the ancient Nahuas believed that death wasn't the end of existence, but rather a moment of transformation. Humanity had been created by gods to labor, and being dead was no reason to cease laboring. The jobs souls are assigned to in the game typically reflect what they did in life. For example, Velasco is a sailor, Membrillo is a coroner, and Nick is a lawyer. But for botanists like Bowsley, we can see the cruelty of irony at its best. There is no way to die in Grim Fandango per se, but that doesn't diminish the danger that is present in the Land of the Dead. One of these dangers is Sproutella, a chemical that injects plant seeds into bone, causing destruction. A symbol of life and growth becomes one of death and decay. As Membrillo explains,
Well, forensic botany is a trying job, Manny. But have you ever spent much time here with a florist? In life, they became florists because they love flowers. But here, a flower is a symbol of pain, of death within death. Their conflicted feelings build and build, and eventually, they become quite mad.
Thanks for the tip. I guess I'll send balloon bouquets from now on.
it's important to note that sprouting victims don't die, but are reincarnated back into the land of the living.
But what happens to the souls when they're sprouted?
I was wondering that myself.
I think the idea was they take the flowers and bring them back to the land of the living. Like it's recycled.
They get
never really thought
they
through.
get reincarnated, which is sort of what you don't want to do.
The themes of work and travel intermingle with each other as Manny changes jobs throughout his adventure. We see him first as a travel agent, then as a restaurant owner, then as a ship captain, and finally as a revolutionary.
Just curious, how'd you get in there?
I squeezed down one of these tubes like a pixie. How do you think I got in here? Through the door, just like you. Say, Chatty Cathy, I got a lot of tubes to flush here.
Hey, me too. I'll let you go.
One of Grimm's most beloved features is its dialogue. The game is endlessly quotable thanks to how comedic it is, especially the sheer number of puns in the dialogue. If Manny had skin, he'd be covered in wrinkles from all the dad jokes he tells.
Could I take your whole punch?
Ha! I doubt you could take my half punch.
While recording footage for this editorial, I played the game a lot more slowly than I usually do, just to make sure I saw as much of the game's writing as I could. During one of these recording sessions, I decided to examine and interact with Glottis' toolboxes during the first act.
It's a tool cabinet. It's locked.
I didn't realize this was a setup for a joke until the beginning of the final act, where Manny has to revive Glottis. I interacted with the little demons' toolboxes and legitimately laughed out loud.
How eerie. They have the same tool cabinets as Glottis. How eerie. They lock up their tools just like Glottis.
The effective use of setup and payoff isn't limited to the game's gags, but also its puzzle design. Take, for example, the Bone Wagon puzzle in the 4th act. In order to complete the puzzle, Manny must borrow a canister of liquid nitrogen from Toto Santos to expedite the solidification process of gelatin.
So what is that stuff they pack canned hams in anyway?
The player is told about the liquid nitrogen back in Act 2. Moments like this, whether significant or offhanded, makes Grim's world feel lived in because it gives meaning to its minutia. The section of the game I feel best illustrates the brilliance of Grim's writing is the pigeon puzzle during Act 1. In this puzzle, Manny must steal pigeon eggs from the DoD building's roof. In order to do so, however, he must find a way to deal with the flock that guards the nest. Integral to the puzzle solution is the surly clown working outside the parade. Manny can request a balloon animal from the clown, but one option stands out among the rest. Famous American poet, Robert Frost.
Run, you pigeons! It's Robert Frost!
I never thought much of this choice and figured it was only a one-off gag. But after listening to the game's producer, Peter McConnell, commentate about the significance of this dialogue option, I found a greater appreciation for this joke.
I think the whole implication is that the clown is way, way beyond his pay grade, and he has disdain for all those around him, and so he makes shapes that his lowly
I never
audience
even thought about that being testimony to the skills of the clown. I thought of it as being Manny being a smartass.
As a studying writer, the earliest rule I was taught is to show and not tell. There are many reasons why to do so, but the most important is because showing something leaves space for subtext. The clown, knowing who Robert Frost is and being skilled enough to create a balloon sculpture of him, implies so much of this minor character that makes us want to know more. But we're only given the tiniest crumb. Furthermore, you can startle him enough to pop a balloon he's twisting, which gives you the solution to the puzzle without explicitly telling you. The show don't tell philosophy is embedded in Grim Fandango's writing, and it does so masterfully.
And as an added bonus, 2% of these, Mr.
My name's Calavera, and I want a bigger cut.
There is a common myth that Grim Fandango was a commercial flop, and single-handedly forced LucasArts to shut down their adventure game division. Though it hadn't made as much as Schafer's previous title, Full Throttle, it still managed to sell well domestically and internationally. LucasArts would go on to release
Escape from Monkey Island
in 2000 before closing their adventure game division. This was due to the adventure game genre falling out of popularity towards the late 90s. Grim Fandango would later go on to develop a massive cult following. In 2014, when Disney acquired Lucasfilm and LucasArts, Schafer and his new studio, Double Fine, were able to retrieve the rights to Grim Fandango with the help of Sony. The result was Grim Fandango Remastered, which featured higher quality FMV cutscenes, higher resolution texture, directional lighting effects, and developer commentary. On a personal note, this is my favorite video game remaster because of how much it respects the original work. It is so common for game developers to simply slap on a new coat of paint on an older game and port it. To varying degrees of success. But Double Fine went as far as salvaging the game's original uncompressed assets from old SCSI discs, preserving as much as the game's original vision and providing the definitive Grim Fandango experience. Grim Fandango is a game I often find myself returning to, especially in moments when I'm not at my best and trying to figure things out. It's an experience that is endlessly comforting with its jokes and lovable characters, but it's also profound in its core messages, and therein lies the greatest irony hidden in Grim Fandango's bones. That a game about being dead teaches us so much about life. Surface level, context, and contrast. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Likes, comments, and subscriptions massively contribute to my channel's success and are greatly appreciated. If you found value in this video and would like to support my content directly, please consider tipping me over at Ko-fi. As always, you can find a list of my research sources in this video's description. Take care, and I'll see you all next time.
Going down, 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 oh rusty anchor. Guess I gotta hang around.